Good evening, and you're listening to The Venomous Fringe. Join us this evening as we sit down and talk about the mysterious phenomena that plagues our world. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and you're listening into The Venomous Fringe. I'm your host, Chris Fringe, joined alongside co-host Ryan Tremblay, the gatekeeper of The Venomous Fringe. Ryan, good evening. How are you, man?
I am doing good. How are you tonight?
I'm doing very well, and tonight, it's a very interesting weather stream going on here. The scheme is odd. It's a mixture of warm and cold. And, we're about ready to get into the middle of February. We're actually enter late February, excuse me. And, it's wild. And there's a lot of interesting array of, in the wintertime, smaller reports of cryptids. And I think I'm only bringing it up for the sake being, because of just how relevant winter season is when it comes to Bigfoots and Dogmen and other type of cryptids out there, whether it's migration or just in general, just the whole gist of the sightings. It's like a recession, very dry season. It's not like it is in the spring and summer.
No, I think it's mating season. When spring comes around, that's when they're start creating babies.
Not a lot of people really dive into that also too, but at the same time, it's not really a relevant topic. But what is a relevant topic though tonight, man, is the Gugwe.
Ah, yes.
Gugwe is perhaps maybe one of my favorite unknown cryptids too. It's weird because I don't really know too much about the Gugwe, and it sucks to say as a guy that researches and does a show, but when I talk about I don't really know too much about it, folks, it's like I know a bit about it, I know what it is, I know what type of creature it could be and its backstory, but I don't know all too much to where I research it off the top of my head and have a definition of what it could be. So for Ryan, you have dived into Gugwe for quite some time, and we've wanted to talk about Gugwe for quite some time. And tonight, I feel that the deliverance of what this creature is, it would be beneficial in a sense that would be able to give out the vibes of what we're looking for in terms of Gugwe. And you have a pretty good analysis on Gugwe, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but what is one thing right now, before we go on and get started with some plugins, can we go about with Gugwe that you can throw for us?
Well, when people think of Gugwe, they actually usually think of the more baboon-like of the Sasquatch species, but what's very interesting is originally they were thought of to be as ogres with bare heads in the Native American lore. So it's really quite fascinating to dig in even deeper.
Yeah, that's something too, and I feel that's another reason why I really didn't know too much about it, because of the origin, or so to speak, of the Gugwe and ancestry-wise. A very vivid picture, and even with Gugwe too, man, you're dealing with something here that I feel is, and I think for many who dive into it, it's a totally different type of creature, I think, one of which that isn't your typical Bigfoot, isn't your typical Dogman. I know there's often been a strong comparison between the two and how they could be of a hybrid, but I think Gugwe, man, is a very odd creature, and I'm looking forward to talking about it tonight, especially with you, Ray.
Oh, definitely. It's going to be a fascinating topic.
But before we get started, though, folks, first and foremost, it's been quite a while since we've done a show, and it'd be great to sit back and talk with you amazing people discussing the greatness of the Venomous Fringe. And good evening, all fellow Fringeaholics. It's great to be sitting in a room talking with all of you, and I hope you all are doing well. I want to thank you all for being patient in the last month, as we've not drilled out any content at all, of course in reference because of my personal life, and if you haven't followed me on social media, you will know of it, as well as also too with some transitionings into the Venomous Fringe as well. So for tonight, me and Ryan, we are working on this project in efforts to help engage with the fellow Fringeaholics into an educational experience and for you guys to get an idea on the type of cryptid we're dealing with here. So I hope you guys enjoy tonight's episode. if you guys would like to get in contact with me or Ryan, you can reach me at the email of thevenomousfringe@gmail.com. You can also reach me on social media, folks. If you guys would like to reach me on Facebook, Twitter, you guys can follow these links down below. They'll be in the description. As well as if you would like to follow Ryan, feel free to check out his Twitter as well as also other social media content. All links down below. And if you guys enjoy this type of show, enjoy the content, and if you guys would like to help donate to the Venomous Fringe, there'll be a PayPal link as well. With all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the Gugwe. So the Gugwe, the mysterious creature, and I don't think there's a real definite term I think you can classify with Gugwe, because I feel it's a totally different creature than your typical Bigfoot, and I feel that for those who are not familiarized with Gugwe, there's a bit of a stretch, there's a bit of confusion, and I think also more importantly, there's a bit of a thing where if the Gugwe is this, then what can it do that a Bigfoot cannot do? And if it's more dominant than a Bigfoot, then why is it so dominant in that sense that it makes Bigfoot not as a strong apex? But Ryan, you've done some extensive research for the longest period of time on Gugwe. What is one of the biggest origins? Where does the Gugwe begin? The term, origin, and beginning points of it being the cryptid we know it as Gugwe today.
Well, they were first mentioned in Micmac legend. They were actually referred to as the Kukwe. And they actually had different names like Kukwej, Kukwes, Kukways. But as I said, they were referred to as ogres with bear-like heads. Now, in the old tales, these things were told of to be around 20 to 30 feet tall, enough to actually carry off people in a sack. And these things differentiate from your typical Bigfoot because instead of 5 toes, they usually leave 3-toed tracks. Unlike your Dogman, though, who leaves the paw prints, these actually leave human-like prints with 3 toes. And they were feared immensely by the tribes. They were incredibly feared for their aggression and their ruthlessness. And it's something you would not want to run into either by yourself or with a party, because they're so strong and so aggressive that they'll find a way to get you. The name itself means little giant.
And just to be clear, would little giant be in the same vicinity of that of the mountain giants?
It could be. According to the legends, they varied from 150 feet tall to 20 to 30 feet tall. So there are a lot of parallels there.
You mentioned about how these creatures, when they first originated from the tribes, a lot of these, and this is a common pattern in a lot of cryptozoology, is when we look at our Native American folklore and where these creatures originate from. But
right.
The little giants seem to have been a more aggressive creature in comparison to your average Bigfoot. Now, I'm going to say little giant because I feel I like that term. Even though Gugwe is a good term, and not to draw a sidetrack moment to the content, but I mean, little giant and where it comes from. You have something in an inch of folklore that truly does manifest itself into what people have seen. But Ryan, let me ask you, man, Gugwe, is it a more, in that description, does it have the ability to be a much more dominant creature than your average Bigfoot?
I should think so, but it wouldn't come easily. There would be that struggle. And fascinatingly enough, is both actually share comparisons that likenesses are very much alike. Gugwe were actually described as hairy like gorillas. And there's a story that if people want to look it up from Silas Rand, it's called The Legend of Micmac. So you can look that up and you can read about it, and it actually features a story of little boys escaping from the Gugwe. And it does detail how these things stalked little boys, and these guys got away from them somehow.
It's very interesting too how Gugways appear to be. We've heard. Let me change it up a bit. You have a creature that seems to have a much more aggressive stronghold in comparison to a Bigfoot, but you have a similarity of then Bigfoot's reportedly. You've heard cases of Bigfoot's kidnapping people. I think there have been stories that have been put out there of reports of Bigfoot's, but at the same time, I mean, Gugwe. A Gugwe can capture people. And it reminds me of the stone giants, the Genasquas. Not to get off topic, but you look at the Genasquas or the stone giants and how they were very notorious in raiding the villages and killing all of the villagers. And then, of course, with Gugways or the little giants, they seem to be the same in parallel to kidnapping people. What they do with those people? Would you think that it would be no different than a Bigfoot capturing somebody? I mean, we've heard of the forest wives. What would they do in a sense? Would they kidnap people to save them for food, trap them, or perhaps breed with them? Would a Gugwe do something like that?
I would say it's more for the food purposes rather than trying to breed or anything like that. You guys are known definitely to be the aggressive ones, and it's interesting you mentioned Genosqua. Because Genosqua were known by the Algonquins very much so, and this is Micmac. So you got two different places in the world that had this similar legend. I think the Genosqua and Gugwe might be one and the same.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, and that's kind of where I was always thinking about. Like the Genosqua, and at least the Gugwe, appear to be two creatures with very similar attributes in terms of aggression and in terms of behavior. I mean, same thing. But really, I mean, when you look at the Genosqua seems to have a much more aggressive factor to it in its behaviors, and a lot of the sightings that have been covered on them seem to have a bit of a strong focus on how they go about, especially if you can raid a village and eat people. What makes it no different from a Genasqua, being intelligent enough to go ahead and raid a small town necessarily doesn't need to do anything too strong, but a town enough that, every single ounce of the town is hidden. What if from sight and in general, a Gugwe can do the same thing? I mean, I feel that these creatures have such a huge intelligence balance to them that they do have a more dominant fashion. But at the same time, it's their intelligence. It's like book smarts over street smarts. And the Gugwe seems to have the same parallels. But I don't necessarily know too much about what I'm going about here. Maybe I'm just going off the bridge. But it's tough when you're diving into something that's truly something hard to get a notice of, especially if you're not familiarized too much with it. And Gugwe seems to be that. Because Gugwe, I feel, has been very misled. And I feel it's misled because there seems to be a lot of drawing in comparisons to Bigfoots as well as Dogman with this creature. And Ryan, we've seen this a lot, I think. Not just in social media groups, but also just in YouTube's comments that try to discuss it and how belief goes over the facts of science.
Yes, very much so. A lot of people believe that the Gugwe is just a misinterpreted or misidentified Sasquatch, whereas some people will also say that Dogman is just simply a Gugwe. But what sets them apart is Dogman actually has the cropped ears, whereas Gugwe are not set to have those. So there are some physical features that differ greatly between the two, and I don't think the two should be confused. In fact, the prime example of the Gugwe, the Beast of Seven Shoots.
And that's a good example. I like how you brought that up. The Beast of Seven Shoots. That's such an infamous photograph, and I know we've talked about it briefly on the show before, but a lot of people in that who have commented, man, their opinions on that photograph, they believe to be a Gugwe. And I think it's because of the way the body is shaped. Because of the way it looks, because of the way I feel like, and this is just, obviously for right now, people who are seeing this, you're seeing the image of the Beast of Seven Shoots as we speak, and you could see that there seems to be a very something in the photograph itself where it has a Gugwe, or at least a primate-like stance to it, very baboon-like. You know how people have talked about baboon? That's been very notorious in that photograph. You also see the muscular build, the structure. It does look ape-like. And,
Very much so.
I mean, one of the most disturbing features of this, and I think it just talks about complexion in the face, is the face. You don't really get to see the face. You only just see the enhanced pixelated view of the face as well as with the body. But the face, there's just something about the face that just looks very strange. It's
It's
weird.
the prominent snout. That snout is just so identifiable right there. You can easily make it out. It looks very much Sasquatch-like until you look at the face.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. That's why a lot of people, when they talked about it, or at least when some really went into it, Gugwe, the way it's shaped, it does look pretty. It's pretty cross. I'm not gonna lie. It's a very big crossed cryptid, very parallel, very notorious, very noticeable. I feel in that image, the Beast of Seven Shoots, there's a Gugwe. There's a Gugwe there. But at the same time, I know that for those who would question, how can you be so sure? And I just go by the analysis of just how we look into the broad shoulders, we look into the facial structure, what you had made mention too of. It's just a very strange, it doesn't feel Bigfoot. I don't see Bigfoot doing something like that. More importantly, you know what's really odd about that photograph is that there's an animal in that photograph.
Yes, they said it could be a dog because somebody's dog went missing right around that time that photograph was taken. And it was a medium breed dog. It wasn't a small poodle or anything. So
there was a few theories. People thought that it was a pig, and some people thought it was a poodle dog. I recall hearing that theory or that story of apparently there was a tour attraction not too far from that area of the photograph being taken, and you have in the photograph that animal, and some people believe that it was a dog because someone who had a dog brought on the tour, the creature emerged from the wood line and the dog apparently had followed, and that's apparently the story of the dog. And it would make perfect sense. The dog in that photograph was Gugwe's lunch. And
exactly.
yeah, I mean, nothing more to it. But the photograph of the Beast of Seven Shoots, I think, is a Gugwe. I feel that there's something in that. It doesn't feel Bigfoot. And I feel that if it was Bigfoot, I would think that we'd be looking at more Bigfoot-like features. But I feel that there's something about that photograph that just doesn't feel Bigfoot to me. And it has a lot to do with the complexion and the pixelated face. And I know that kind of sounds like a poor opinion and choice of judgment, but you got to see it you got to look at the photograph yourself and just get a good observation. It just has a weird structure to it that's rather different than your typical quote-unquote Bigfoot.
It's actually quite ominous, too. It's just the fact that it's kind of looking up at the cameraman.
And that's another thing, too, man. You know, the story behind the Seven Shoots photo is that the photographer didn't even realize that there was an ape or something in his photo until he reviewed the photos when he got home. And when he did, he was so startled that he didn't even understand what the hell it was. Even think big Photoshop experts even looked at that photograph and they came back saying that there's nothing in this photo that is of red flag, of a composite or deception or any weird marks that would indicate some sort of noisy negative bleeds. So that would result in it being a fabricated photo. This was a very genuine photo. The photograph came back. Now, of course, you can look at it too from the analysis of, well, what if this creature was a man in a suit? And the suit, because it was taken in a foreign country, maybe there's more. It could be a homemade suit. It could be a suit that you can find at certain companies that are only available in that specific country, or whatever. I feel that there isn't enough ground to say, because if you look through the photos, there's the whole photo album. There's video too of the photographer filming in the exact same spot that the creature was seen in the photo, and his girlfriend took a comparison shot, and you could see in a sense that they are not too far off the ground, but really, I mean, it's hard to make out because it's a very steep photograph. The photograph itself is just hard to really make out something too narrow that would make it a good complex. But you can get a good idea on what's in that photograph, though.
Very much so. Some have tried to say that it was a tree stump, but a tree stump would always be there. It's not going to change position. So the whole tree stump theory just doesn't hold any sway.
I still think to this day, though, because the photo was taken, I think, in 2005.
Yeah, that's correct.
So it's basically, man, 15 years, and that photograph has been worn with. I remember when it was only 5 years old, I looked it up. And I guess I'm only making this, and I'm bringing this up now, is because it's such an interesting photo. I feel like it was at one point declared Dogman because of the ears, and then it was declared Bigfoot because of its look. Someone said Bear Man, and then I feel now, in a mature analogy, we're dealing with a Gugwe.
I would agree with you on that one.
It's a very interesting photograph, to say the least. But not to dive too much off the rails with Gugwe's Beast of Seven Shoots, going back into the Gugwe creature itself. Ryan, when was it when we really started to get the first sightings of Gugwe's in modern America?
That actually ended up having a boom during the 80s. A lot of people, once they started seeing Sasquatch, started seeing something new. And rather than just the 5-toed prints, they were reporting 3-toed prints, highly aggressive types coming at them during the night. And that's when people started realizing, wait a minute, it could be these Gugwe that were spoken of in the old legends. And the more that we looked into it, the more research we did, the more we realized, okay, there's variants here. There's something going on. There's something else out there besides the Sasquatch, besides the Dogman. And yeah, the Gugwe have become a rising thing. More and more people are seeing these, especially those who habituate Sasquatch.
And do you feel that there's a huge misconception when there are Gugwe sightings and Bigfoot sightings, and how the two are so similar?
Oh, absolutely. Especially Dogman as well. When people see Gugwe, they automatically think Dogman because of the snout. And they don't really stop to look at the type of legs that they have. They don't have the canine-like legs. They have the human-like legs.
When the sightings first came out in the 80s, do you believe that there was a huge bark of I think the people thinking that they were seeing Bigfoots, but really were seeing a much more aggressive creature, much more stronger and aggressive than a Bigfoot. How do you feel for the 80s, in that time period, that people would think that if these things were out there, how they could work? Because I feel that if these started coming about in the 80s, Gugwe would now have a more complicated time trying to go about, because I feel that there are sightings of Gugwes that have been misconcepted as Bigfoots and Dogman sightings, and that if there have been these sightings, that obviously people have seen Gugwes and think it's Bigfoot, And that's where the whole thought process of, well, these things are widely, Bigfoots are aggressive, Bigfoot's dogmen are evil. But really, what if they're seeing Gugways? And these are more aggressive cryptids in comparison to your average Bigfoot and dogman.
That would explain a lot, because if you read back during the 80s and even as far as back as the 50s, there was a lot of aggressive Sasquatch attacks. And I think, like you said, people were actually seeing the Gugwe and having encounter with the Gugwe, but their mind automatically went to Sasquatch because of how they look. You know, the general bipedal stance and the ape-like appearance. In reality, though, I think it was these Gugwe coming in more and more. And that's going to increase, I believe. I really do believe that.
Do you feel that the increase is a big thing even more now because of the population density, or do you feel because there's more industrial economics coming into play?
I think it's a little bit of both. You know, I mean, we don't exactly go out and hunt these, nor should we. But because we don't hunt them, like any animal, if you don't hunt, they're not going to be kept in check. And as that happens, their population's going to increase in number. And since we're encroaching so much, encounters are just going to happen more and more on a daily basis, perhaps.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, man, is the fact that I feel that with the dog, like, one of the things with, and I don't want to sound like I'm losing words, it's just the fact that Gugwe as a whole, their aggression, their meters, their demeanor, it sounds like they do what they do with their form of purpose and the formation that they do because of how aggressive one can choose and be, and just intensity wise. They're very smart. They seem to have a very high rank of intelligence. Where have been some cases where these creatures have used their intelligence? Like, what has there been any real documented situations where they feel that they've been rather notable for doing things out of the ordinary that have been a little uncomparison to your average Bigfoot?
As I mentioned before, there was that story from Silas Rand in his 1894 collection, and it does specifically tell of a story where Gugwe stalked and kidnapped children. And this Gugwe was actually using methods such as sneaking up behind them and hiding on them as they were going on the hunting trails. And it would make noises to distract the little boys, so they were looking in a different direction, and then it would come in and sneak in and take them. And it would actually stick them on it would impale them on a stick in order to cook them.
Yeah, that's something. That's another thing as well. Like, this is the thought process of that, right? The idea that these creatures practice in a global sense, right? That they do things that aren't fully the same as a regular Bigfoot or a dogman.
Hey,
Why would a Gugwe do something like that, Ryan?
it's nurture versus nature. I think in this case, they just had a different environment than your Paddy type Sasquatch. You know, Paddy didn't really have any of the hunters going after it in California, whereas these guys may have very well had to contend with hunters, and they became aggressive throughout the ages. And that aggression just carried on and carried on through generations.
And doesn't that go back to an old thought about how humanity is the problem of all wrongs?
Very much so.
And how we were able to put these animals in capacities where they become aggressive. It's like your average wild animal that's abused, right? Not to get into an off-subject topic, but something that we see in everyday life. An animal that's abused to the point where it's either going to be scared or it's going to be aggressive. It's going to fight back. So what
Or
if the
even a
goat...
starving animal. You know, a starving animal will become very aggressive in order to get food. And once it finds that food supply, it's going to become 10 times more aggressive to protect said food supply.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the other thing, too. The idea, I think, when it comes to Gugwe, when it comes to the thoughts and how they are of a practice of indication, you know, they have this factor of intelligence because of the form of their past aggressions, from the form of their necessary roughness. That's what kind of creates that barrier, man. That they are a force that you don't want to wreck with. They're very aggressive, passively and aggressively.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, if you picture the strength of a Sasquatch and you add the aggression of a Gugwe, put them together, you really don't ever want to run into that.
You put up a Gugwe against a Bigfoot, who would be the winner? And this is not for the comedic value, it's for a curiosity factor.
Well, I would have to give the aggression scale to the Gugwe for sure. And since it does have the intelligence, I would have to say the Gugwe's going to come out on top. Now, of course, you can add in variables if you want to, and that can be for the audience to do. But I think one-on-one, Gugwe's going to take it.
The Gugwe will be, I think, it works. It's a, it does work a whole lot. You know?
Look at it this way. You can be as smart as, the most brilliant of minds, but really, is that going to do a lot of good when something has teeth and nails and it has the equal strength that you do? Eventually, those weapons are going to come into play.
And that's something, too, that people underestimate. I mean, I think a Bigfoot can pick up a hatchet, and I'm not trying to be funny, I'm just trying to give an example. I mean, I feel that they could pick up weapons, right? But if a Gugwe can pick up a weapon, too, but also have the formation of aggression. Now, when I was talking to you earlier, Ryan, I had mentioned that I feel, and this is something I want to talk about now, Gugwes, I like to compare them to chimpanzees.
Very good analogy.
Because when we look at chimpanzees, and I'm not talking about, I don't want to dive too much into it because it's not that it's a topic that's off topic, it's just the principle that it's a very simple comparison. Chimpanzees are known to be aggressive in the wild. They don't, a chimp can be necessarily, be chased by hunters and grow up to be aggressive, but when we look at mankind of chimps and how they are as a primate, it's kind of how it was. These everyday circus to these chimps are basically, their whole life is an exercise. They work out daily. They are strong. They rip testicles off. They rip arms off. They rip faces off. Now, if you want to go about it and say that, a Gugwe can do the same thing, I think a Gugwe can do anything. I think a Gugwe, if it is provoked, will rip the face off of somebody, will kill someone, will mangle someone, will murder someone if it wanted to.
It's interesting that you say that because Gugwe are known as the face eaters.
Now, see, Ryan, I'm not going to get controversial because I've heard this term before from other researchers, but what is the face eater thing? What is it? Because is it same as Gugwe, same thing? Where does the face eater come from?
I think the Gugwe are the face eaters, but I think the whole process of going after the face first is just a simple predatory tool. If you look at some of the known animals out there, such as mountain lions will go for the face. It's a quick way to kill your prey with minimal effort.
And that's another thing, too. The criminology efforts of what this creature can do, whether it's rip the face off of somebody or go about it in a formation that truly does spark the thought process of its definition of aggression. See, that's why I think Gugwe is such a very fascinating term.
It is, it very much so is. But if you look at the whole process of, it biting somebody's face, it's really a very versatile killing tactic.
Oh, absolutely.
You can suffocate your prey that way. Snakes do that. Where's the first place that a snake goes when it's strangling its prey? It covers the face.
Well, let's not forget either that a snake will grow in size when it's about to eat something.
Right.
So it can devour it whole.
Exactly.
Here's an interesting story for you. You hear about how, you want to talk about a versatile tactic. You want to talk about how a predator will size up in comparison. Look at tigers, bro. I'm sure you're familiar with the video of tigers There's a video in India of a guy that was on on an elephant, out of all animals, and the tiger was in the damn grass, sizing up, getting ready to charge after this dude, jumps up onto the dude and attacks him, and
I did.
like obviously they don't show the full video of him bleed. Like you can see him bleeding, but they don't see the full, you don't see what happened. But I mean, it's an example. A Gugwe can do the same thing. And it's something.
It really is. It's actually a very interesting tactic. It does show just how high the intelligence is on these things. Because it wants to make a quick kill. It doesn't want to have to struggle with its prey. That's the quickest way to do it. Pounce, grab the face, and boom, it could break the neck. It's a perfect position. When you have the head, you can move anybody's body in whatever direction you want to.
Let's not forget, too, that Dogmen and Bigfoots, they normally... Like, Dogmen can easily... I don't think they don't go for the head too much, besides probably, like, claw.
Right.
And this is not just on... This is just going by what we see from animal killings. Whereas Bigfoots often snap the necks.
Right.
So Gugwe seem to be the only type that would do a form of aggression, which reminds me of a scene from a movie called Abominable, where the Yeti creature rips the face off of a guy who throws a hatchet in his back.
Oh yes, I remember that scene.
It reminds me so much of Gugwe, Face Eater. It's very
What I think of when I think of Gugwe is my mind goes back to that movie Primal Rage.
Ah, yes, Primal Rage. Very good movie.
Terrifying Sasquatch in that one, but that does remind me of a Gugwe.
That's the movie where it was basically like Predator?
Right, yeah. Where it kidnaps the guy's wife or fiance and he's out to get her back.
Very interesting story, very romantic. I mean, it's Prince Charming after the Beast. To save
Not a
him.
word I would use, but
well, it's just a form of language, I guess.
Right.
But no, man, Primal Rage, good movie. If anybody out there wants to watch a nice movie and wants a nice 6-pack of beer in the same time zone, you might want to upgrade it to a 12-pack or a 24-pack by the first hour, because it gets better as time goes on. But Primal Rage is a very good movie. I think it's a little underrated, though, I think.
Oh, definitely. It was a great, great movie.
That ending,
it's right up there with Exists. It's right up there.
Exists is a good movie as well. That ending, the Primal Rage, though.
Oh, yes. When the number of Sasquatch come out from hiding and that one guy is all on his own to face them all.
Oh, we already know the ending to that.
Imagine being in that position, though.
But that's a beautiful example of how these creatures can operate in a pack. I mean, let's think of it like this. How many times have we looked at Bigfoot cases, right, where they have sat there and we've looked at Bigfoot's reports of people who have seen a Bigfoot and just one Bigfoot, but then when we hear Dogman reports, we may have a Dogman report where there's a Dogman sighting there, but then there was 2 other ones following from behind, or there's a few from each circle.
Right.
My point is that what if a Gugwe operates in a pack, like a predator pack, and they do what they do, the way they do?
I have to think that the Gugwe are more the solitary hunters just because of how aggressive they are. I think they have such high aggression that they don't even get along with other Gugwe. It's probably more of a territorial thing, though.
I agree.
When they know there's a certain number of prey in an area, they're going to make sure they're the only predator to catch that prey.
And I agree with that, too, because, I mean, like, that's just very... Like, to me, it's something that, with a brilliance of understanding, these creatures will do what they need to do. But, yeah, the Gugwe, very aggressive creature, one of which I feel really dives into the parallel between the difference. And its origin too, man. You got the origin in Native American lore. I mean, it doesn't get any more suspenseful than diving into that type of topic, or at least the frail portion of the topic. Ryan, what else is it when it comes to Gugwe, though? What do you feel as what one should also know? Let's talk about the basics of Gugwe types. What are we
Okay, well,
what are we looking
I
at
feel
here?
I feel these things are very, very territorial. They're gonna defend their home turf no matter what. Doesn't matter how many of you there are. If there's even one of them out there, you're not gonna have a good time out there. Whereas Sasquatch tends to be more, I don't want to say docile, but I'll say shy, maybe elusive. These guys kind of like to make their presence known. If you go into their turf, you're going to know about it. They're going to raise holy hell and make you regret the moment you enter there. They're not like your average Sasquatch, whereas they don't do the signs of gifting or even the tree structures. They're not really known for that. These guys are very stealthy, more stealthy than your average Sasquatch. They're elusive. They're sticking to the shadows. They're cunning. They're your apex predator. They're the top of the top. So these are the things that you do not want to mess with. Even Sasquatch researchers will tell you if you have Gugwe on your property or anywhere near your property to avoid them at all costs. So that should tell you something right there. And I've even heard stories of Gugwe taking on Dogman. And they dissect the Dogman, no problem, and that shows how strong they are and how aggressive they are. If they can do that to a Dogman or another Sasquatch, think about what they can do to you.
So the territorial Gugwe.
Mm-hmm.
The Now see, it's funny, man, because you have a classification here where and it's just going by reports, they operate very strongly.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes perfect sense to have a creature so aggressively do the things it does territorially, and also at the same time for ones that are roaming around in suburban areas. I mean, there was a report, I believe, that occurred in Arkansas involving someone who had a squatch on his property, and the squatch was so damn aggressive that it was ready to attack the damn property. In which many cases we've heard this before, but in the format it was presented, it really laid an eye on me, man, because I've often heard reports there and there of how when cryptids are on territories or at least properties that it's strongly aggressive.
Well, yeah. I mean, when anything sets up a home, no matter where it is, even if it's your property first, in your mind it's your property, but in their mindset it was theirs first. It belongs to them. You're just visiting, and they're going to do what they can do to get rid of you. You can run into that with bears, mountain lions. Anybody who's ever been out in the woods knows that when you cross into a bear's territory, it's problematic for you. So if you're living someplace where this thing has been habituating for years, or maybe its ancestors have been there, then yeah, you're seen as the intruder. So it's only natural that it's going to do whatever it can to frighten you off. Now, I'm not saying they're evil. That's not what I'm saying here. It's just that they possess that animal intellect of, okay, this is my property, this is my turf, you need to get out of here. And so it follows that they initiate the scare tactics.
I agree. That's a very terrifying thought, too, if you think about it.
Oh, most definitely.
See, and that's another thing, too, when you really look into the concept of the Gugwe, and this is another thing that when I was really looking up some research on was that Gugwe really do have a boundary between their loath of salvation of survival versus their distaste, I think, for anybody who intrudes. I mean, you talked about a Bigfoot, or at least a Dogman that was killed by a Gugwe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the story goes that the Dogman wandered into the Gugwe's territory, and it did not take kindly to its presence. So it pounced, it attacked it, and it just dissected that poor thing. It ripped it limb from limb.
I'll tell you that. I mean, it's an idea that if a Gugwe can do that to a Dogman that everybody seems to fear, then what would be the case and cause of the Gugwe? I'd be terrified of that. And I just want to be clear on something too. And Ryan, I also want to be clear with this as well, because I know that you had a Dogman encounter. I don't want to sound insulted when I said what everybody fears, because I would fear it too. But to see a Gugwe do that to a creature that is very fearsome to everybody, my fear now increases 10 times more, because this thing, if that can do it to a Dogman, what can it do to me?
Right, exactly. And as a researcher, I'm actually excited to see a Dogman again, but I never want to cross paths with a Gugwe, ever. Doesn't matter if I'm armed or not. I never want to see one of these things.
Isn't it? I feel that story, man, it's lodged in me in a way. I feel that, if that were the case, a Gugwe can do that. But then again, a Gugwe could be very notorious. It can rip a dog in half. It can rip trees in half. It can rip their own in half. So they definitely do have a stronghold communication-wise with their own pack, I would assume.
I would assume so. If they operate in packs, I would definitely assume so. But I still stick to my theory that they're solitary hunters. If you want to picture them as another animal, you could actually kind of compare them to a great white shark in behavior, where they tend to stick to themselves, but when it comes to defending their prey or their turf, they're extremely vicious and they'll do what they have to do.
That's a good comparison too, a good interpretation too. A great white shark, and a Gugwe. The Gugways too. I know that there is a huge buzz about Gugwe being these fearsome loner type animals when I was doing my research. And one of the things that stands out to me is its brilliance of how they could be not really well discussed in terms of how your Bigfoots and Dogmen are, but that they're so highly aggressive. And if one were to really violate, or at least go into the wrongs into that territory of one, I couldn't imagine how the damage would be.
I'm not sure I want to. Like I mentioned earlier, since they don't leave the tree bends or tree breaks, and they're so stealthy about their presence, it's almost like they're setting you up. As a researcher, if you wander to their turf, you're not going to really know it until it wants you to know it's there. And at that moment, it's too late for you. What are you going to do? What can you do?
And that's the what if factor.
Can you outrun it? Probably not. Can you outmuscle it? Definitely not.
Like I said, in comparison to chimps. You look at chimps and you see how aggressive they are, and then you look at how they format. They're just
if they do operate in packs, I would say it's very much similar to, like you said, to chimp troops. If you look at them in the wild, they formulate methods to attack other troops and just decimate every single member of the opposing troop.
That's a scary factor to it, because the Gugwe can just format and operate in such the same way that it makes me wonder, like, how brilliant they really are, as a creature. And I wish they do have a good brilliance to them. I think that they've definitely proven, or at least I think so, of how wild they could be.
Well, they certainly have a high IQ. I mean, to actually cover their existence, to cover their presence, and just remain silent until somebody wanders into that place, that shows a high level. That definitely shows a conscious of what they're doing.
And I think that they are very on top and on point as being apex predators, or at least I think, in their own respected states as what they are. I consider them no different than chimpanzees.
Good assessment, yeah.
But at the
Very
same,
much so. Mixed in with baboons a little bit.
Yeah, the baboon thing too. Baboons are very freaky, but at the same time, it makes perfect sense. They're very strong-holded animals. Ryan, what else should we really touch? I mean, Gugwe as a whole, from its origin to its behavior to its sightings to its wild son. I mean, what else do we need to know about these mysterious Gugways?
Well, like I said earlier, I think a lot of Dogman sightings are actually misidentified Gugwe. And all that fear surrounding Dogman, I think it's kind of misplaced. In some cases, I do believe that witnesses have seen Gugwe instead of Dogman. And so it is very wise to actually fear the Gugwe. If you actually look at some Dogman encounters where, they're personally going up to the doors or up to the houses and, attacking the homes, tapping on windows, slapping walls, then that's the Gugwe operating. And that, again, that shows their intelligence right there. They're trying to lure you outside. So you can't underestimate these things, not by any means.
It's a very good analogy and a good thought. Because at the end of the day, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with something here that is formally aggressive, one of which does have a high IQ, one that can kill you. I feel that in conclusion, in the final thoughts, what a creature, Ryan.
It's a fascinating creature, isn't it?
I feel that we can touch more base on this down the road, but I feel we can also go ahead and talk a little bit about more with other things too with it. Gugwe as a whole,
Oh, definitely.
I find Gugwe to be a very interesting cryptid. I will say this though.
It's very, very fascinating. It's one that I actually hold near and dear. I'm just very interested in the topic itself. So I would love to cover it some more down the road.
I think so too. But I think tonight we leave off on the basics of what it is and the understandings of what it is. But I want to go ahead and I want to conclude with a few things. First and foremost, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in tonight to this episode of the Venomous Fringe. Of course, our cryptid discussion on the Gugwe and what it is. And folks, if you guys have any questions about the Gugwe and we'd like to ask them in a future episode, write them down below in the comments section, or if you would like to ask me or Ryan a question, feel free to write them out now. And, by the way, folks, if you guys would like to get in contact with me, you can reach us at thevenomousfringe@gmail.com. Please feel free to follow me and Ryan on social media. We'll leave links down below. And if you guys are interested and would like to go ahead and take a look at a few links, check them out down below. My name is Chris Fringe, and I'm joined alongside by my co-host, Ryan Tremblay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for tuning in tonight. You all have a fantastic evening, and be safe wherever you're at. Good night, everybody.